What's going on, family, and welcome back to the channel. Dragon Canoe checking in again. My oh my, what a time to be alive. You can't make this stuff up, man. We're just having fun with it at this point. Part 66, I mean, what can I say? We made it. Here we are. We're in the fourth quarter now. At this point, we just doing layup lines, man. We ain't even got to work too hard, man. Most High got our back. It's written on our hearts. You just got to stick to the script. Simple and plain. And shout out to the good Ak Real Truth. Go check him out. Subscribe to his channel. Hop in that powwow with our power. Allahu. Let's get it, man. This is a follow-up to Son Mothers. We're going to get a little bit more in-depth on what it meant or means to have covenant promises or covenant protection. And then we're going to connect that with the Indians, the Shawnees, the Lenape. Let's get it. Can't make this stuff up. We're just having fun with it tonight. Let me know what y'all think. Leave a note in the comments. In the Old Testament, a child was determined to be under the covenant, primarily through birth into an Israelite family and the subsequent application of circumcision. Inclusion was based on the covenant promise established between Hawa and Abraham.
And God said unto Abraham, Thou shalt keep my covenant, therefore, thou and thy seed after thee in their generations. This is my covenant, which ye shall keep, between me and you and thy seed after thee. Every man-child among you shall be circumcised. And ye shall circumcise the flesh of your foreskin, and it shall be a token of the covenant betwixt me and you. And he that is 8 days old shall be circumcised among you, every man-child in your generations, he that is born in the house, or bought with money of any stranger, which is not of thy seed. He that is born in thy house, and he that is bought with thy money, must needs be circumcised. And my covenant shall be in your flesh for an everlasting covenant. And the uncircumcised man-child whose flesh of his foreskin is not circumcised, that soul shall be cut off from his people. He hath broken my covenant. And God said unto Abraham, As for Sarai thy wife, thou shalt not call her name Sarai, but Sarah shall her name be. And I will bless her, and give thee a son also of her. Yea, I will bless her, and she shall be a mother of nations. Kings of people shall be of her. Then Abraham fell upon his face, and laughed, and said in his heart, Shall a child be born unto him that is 100 years old? And shall Sarah that is 90 years old bear? And Abraham said unto God, Oh, that Ishmael might live before thee. And God said, Sarah thy wife shall bear thee a son indeed, and thou shalt call his name Isaac, and I will establish my covenant with him for an everlasting covenant, and with his seed after him. And as for Ishmael, I have heard thee. Behold, I have blessed him, and will make him fruitful, and will multiply him exceedingly. 12 princes shall he beget, and I will make him a great nation. But my covenant will I establish with Isaac. But my covenant will I establish with Isaac.
Not with Ishmael. So Ishmael is blessed, but I don't think he's necessarily under the covenant promises per se. I think he just kind of got the bag as part of the greater deal. But he did participate in the cultural necessities that required them to be an Israelite. So just meditate on that. All right, let's get this real quick. Children born to believing Israelite parents were considered covenant children from birth, or even prior to birth, by virtue of their lineage. Inclusion extended to all those under a patriarch's care, like we saw with Abraham. For example, in Abraham's household, both biological sons and those born to servants or bought with money were included. Male children were required to be circumcised on the 8th day. This act served as the physical sign and seal of their membership in the covenant community. Parents were commanded to diligently teach their children the law and the ways of the Most High as a fulfillment of their own covenant responsibilities. Theologically, a distinction was sometimes drawn between the children of the flesh, meaning physical descendants, and the children of the promise, those chosen by Yahweh. Individuals like Esau were cited as examples of those born into the lineage, but ultimately excluded from Yahweh's covenantal favor. So again, this is where it gets tricky. So Esau is another case study here, cited as an example of those born into the lineage, but excluded from the covenantal favor. For most of the Old Testament period, children received their Israelite identity and tribal affiliation through their father. Descent from the father determined which tribe a child belonged to and where they could inherit land. So important. Tribal membership determined which tribe a child belonged to and the land that they could inherit. Meditate on that. That's going to be important towards the end of the video. Land that they could inherit from descent and tribal membership. Many prominent biblical figures had non-Israelite wives, yet their children were considered Israelites under the covenant. Examples include Joseph, who married an Egyptian woman, Moses, who married Zipporah, a Midianite, Judah, who married a Canaanite woman, and Boaz, who married Ruth, a Moabite. In the biblical narrative, these children were fully integrated into the covenant community. Ephraim and Manasseh, Joseph's sons, despite having an Egyptian mother, they became the heads of the 2 of the 12 tribes of Israel. Gershom and Eleazar, Moses' sons, they were recognized as Israelites and were part of the Levite community. Shelah, Perez, and Zerah, Judah's sons, they formed the primary clans of the tribe of Judah, which eventually produced the Davidic royal line. Obed, Boaz's son, as the son of Boaz and Ruth, he was a legitimate Israelite and the grandfather of King David. All right, y'all know me, man. Let's go deeper. Let's get deeper. So we're talking pre-law marriages. Joseph, Judah, and Moses married before the formal giving of the Mosaic law at Sinai, which later restricted certain types of intermarriage. Figures like Ruth and Rahab, Boaz's mother, are often viewed as proselytes who joined the covenant, ensuring their offspring were seen as fully legitimate within the community. So we have a difference between pre-law marriages and the formal giving of Mosaic law at Sinai.
When the Lord thy God shall bring thee into the land whither thou goest to possess it, and hath cast out many nations before thee, the Hittites, and the Girgashites, and the Amorites, and the Canaanites, and the Perizzites, and the Hivites, and the Jebusites, 7 nations greater and mightier than thou. And when the Lord thy God shall deliver them before thee, thou shalt smite them and utterly destroy them. Thou shalt make no covenant with them, nor show mercy unto them. Neither shalt thou make marriages with them. Thy daughter thou shalt not give unto his son, nor his daughter shalt thou take unto thy son. For they will turn away thy son from following me, that they may serve other gods. So will the anger of the Lord be kindled against you, and destroy thee suddenly.
All right, family. Again, I'm trying to make a point here. I'm not trying to like troll or like be funny or nothing. Like, love who you want to love, be who you want to be with. But if you're trying to pass down covenantal promises, covenant promises, just know it's not going to happen unless it's by way of the Mosaic law. It is what it is, man. It is what it is. Choose up and choose wisely is basically what the Most High is saying. At least if you want to pass covenant promises down to your posterity. If not, so be it. The choice is yours.
Now therefore give not your daughters unto their sons, neither take their daughters unto your sons, nor seek their peace or their wealth forever, that ye may be strong and eat the good of the land, and leave it for an inheritance to your children forever. And after all that is come upon us for our evil deeds, and for our great trespass, seeing that thou, our God, hast punished us less than our iniquities deserve, and hast given us such deliverance as this, Should we again break thy commandments and join in affinity with the people of these abominations? Wouldest not thou be angry with us till thou hadst consumed us, so that there should be no remnant nor escaping? O Lord God of Israel, thou art righteous, for we remained yet escaped as it is this day. Behold, we are before thee in our trespasses, for we cannot stand before thee because of this. Now when Ezra had prayed, and when he had confessed, weeping and casting himself down before the house of God, there assembled unto him out of Israel a very great congregation of men and women and children, for the people wept very sore. And Shechaniah the son of Jehiel, one of the sons of Elam, answered and said unto Ezra, We have trespassed against our God, and have taken strange wives of the people of the land. Yet now there is hope in Israel concerning this thing. Now therefore let us make a covenant with our God to put away all the wives, and such as are born of them, according to the counsel of my Lord, and of those that tremble at the commandment of our God. And let it be done according to the law. Arise, for this matter belongeth unto thee. We also will be with thee. Be of good courage, and do it. Then arose Ezra, and made the chief priests, the Levites, and all Israel to swear that they should do according to this word. And they swear.
All right, family, let's get it. Are y'all tracking here? Ezra wasn't going. He wasn't playing. He said, they got to go. They got to get up out of here. I don't care where they go, but they can't be here. And Ezra sent them on their way. And then he signed. And then he had the Levites stamp them too. So it was, you knew it was a wrap. All right, y'all, here's where it gets interesting. True physical circumcision was rare among North American tribes, but several groups practiced rituals that early Europeans interpreted as analogous or identical to the Hebrew rite. The Lenape, which translates to real people or original people, also known as the Delaware Indians, because they're found along the Delaware River. Lenape. Some early observers and later researchers suggested specific lineages within these Algonquian-speaking groups practice forms of circumcision. All right, I told y'all it's heating up. Traditionally, the Shawnee referred to the Lenape as their grandfathers, a title of respect acknowledging the Lenape as an older ancestral branch of the Algonquian people. This cultural bond formed a family obligation to support one another in times of war. So we got the Shawnee, Tecumseh in them, the prophet, and the Lenape, aka Delaware Indians, who are considered the grandfathers, who practice certain Hebrew rites according to the Europeans. We're just connecting the dots here. According to the tradition, the Lenape and Shawnee were once part of a single massive group of people living in the Northwest, possibly near the Great Lakes or further west. Led by a series of chiefs, the people decided to migrate toward the east, the land of the rising sun. They eventually reached a great river, often identified as the Mississippi. To cross into the eastern lands, they had to fight a powerful and mysterious group of people known as the Talagui, who lived in great earthwork fortifications, they say. The Lenape and their allies, the Huron and Anishinaabe, eventually defeated them and moved further east. Once they reached the Atlantic coast, the people settled into the Delaware River Valley. However, as the population grew, bands began to split off to find new hunting grounds. The Lenape, or grandfathers, stayed at the center or the original home, the Delaware Valley, and the Shawnee, or Shawanwa, meaning southerner, split off and moved south into what is now the Ohio Valley, Kentucky, and the Carolinas. All right, y'all, can't make this up. Let's get it. Let's go further. In Shawnee tradition, there is a recurring theme of being a wandering or scattered people. Because they were the branch that moved away from the ancestral grandfather trunk, they frequently returned to the Lenape for diplomatic advice and spiritual guidance. This created a sense that while the Shawnee were the warriors and explorers, The Lenape were the keepers of the law. Keepers of the law, they say, and the original source of their ceremony. So remember, Lenape grandfathers, original people, aka real people. Now we find out they're considered keepers of the law, and we know that they're one of the few tribes that the Europeans documented that practiced circumcision. So connect the dots. The influence of the Iroquois on both the Shawnees and Delawares was nevertheless strong until the outbreak of the French and Indian War, when both groups disregarded the Six Nations of the Iroquois and allied themselves with the French. Even after they ceased to be politically dominated by the Iroquois League, both Shawnees and Delawares continued to associate with and exchange cultural elements with the Mingo Iroquois. So it's armed conflict here, Indian Armageddon. The Shawnees and Delawares, along with the small faction of the Mingo Iroquois, tribed up against the Six Nations of the Iroquois. In this case or instance, the Shawnees, Lenape, and Mingos allied themselves with the French. So again, we're trading war stories here. Alright, so at this point, the Delaware, aka Lenape, or original people, and the Shawnees are our case study here. This is how we're going to connect the dots to the information we got in the beginning of the video. Let's get it. The Shawnee were of very wandering and warlike habit. Their earliest historical habitat appears to have been on the Middle Savannah River, which takes its name from them. Savannah River is named after the Shawnees. Duly noted. But before the end of the 17th century, we find a portion of them, apparently the main body, occupying the basin of the Cumberland River in Tennessee and the adjacent region of Kentucky. About the year 1692, most of those remaining in South Carolina moved northward and settled upon the upper Delaware River with their relatives and friends, the Delaware and Mohicans. So they teamed up with the Delawares and the Mohicans. Come on, dog, you can't make this up. These immigrants appear to have been of the Pequot division. I'm telling you, the Shawnees were them ones, man. When they tribed up, you better watch out, dog. Up to about the year 1730, the Shawnee still had a town on Savannah River near Augusta, from which they were finally driven by the Cherokees, from their former intimate association with the Uchi, living in the same neighborhood. Some early writers have incorrectly supposed the two tribes to be the same. A part of the Shawnee joined the Creek Confederacy, and up to the beginning of the last century, and probably until the final removal to the west, occupied a separate town and retained their distinct language. We're just connecting the dots here. Those settled upon the Cumberland were afterward expelled by the Cherokee and Chickasaw and retired to the upper waters of the Ohio under the protection of the Delaware, the Lenape, the original people. So there's a connection here, clearly, who had given refuge to the original immigrants from South Carolina. So again, you got the Shawnee had to join the Creek Confederacy because they was getting ran off by the Cherokees and the Chickasaws. So again, armed conflict, Indian Armageddon. Go back and watch the videos. The Delaware or Lenape held it down though for the Shawnee. So let's get into it. Many tribes, such as the Creek and Cherokee, also maintain strict laws regarding ritual uncleanness, separation during menstruation, and purification after touching the dead, which early explorers noted as remarkably similar to Mosaic law. I cannot make this up. Creeks being influenced by the Shawnees, who were influenced by the Delawares, and I'm sure the Cherokee adopted these ways because they saw how they were thriving. Early explorers often interpreted indigenous rituals through a biblical lens, leading to the Bruish Indian theory. This theory suggested that Native Americans were the descendants of the lost 10 tribes of Israel, using reported practices of circumcision as primary, in quote, evidence. I got more receipts. He occupies a small but honored niche in archaeological history for his stratigraphic excavation of an Indian burial mound on his Virginia estate in 1784. In his notes on the state of Virginia, he described layers of human bones and argued that the mound was built by ancestors of local Indians who still visited the location in his day. Jefferson, meaning Thomas Jefferson, sober observations were ignored by his scholarly contemporaries, despite being based on one of the first stratigraphic excavations in the world. Was Jefferson correct when he argued that Native Americans constructed the tumuli, or were the Canaanites the 10 tribes of Israel? It is stated that observers in the 17th and 18th centuries looked for specific, in quote, Hebraicisms to prove a link to the Old Testament. In his 1775 work, History of the American Indians, Adair claimed to have lived with the Cherokee, Chickasaw, Choctaw, and Creek for 40 years, arguing that they were Israelites based on their tribal divisions, lunar calendars, and purification rites. But we know that all tribes are not created equal. Part 33, go back and watch the video. The Shawnees, the Delawares, and certain Mississippian tribes had a different pedigree. They all were not the same. And the Shawnees definitely had the greatest profits of any Indian tribe. Let's get it. We're gonna keep it. Let's keep it rolling. We're gonna get deeper. Among the newcomers to Tuckabatchee, talking Tuckabatchee town, Tecumseh stomps down every house in Tuckabatchee town. Among the newcomers to Tuckabatchee were refugees who, according to a late 18th century visitor, had been, in quote, almost destroyed by the Iroquois and the Hurons. These refugees were probably Shawnees, forced out of the Ohio River Valley by Iroquois warfare. Among Eastern Indians, Shawnees were well known for their ability to move easily among desperate native groups. They bridged the cultural divide that often separated native people from different regions and acted as mediators and messengers. They had the light. It was in them, not on them. They could go where they wanted, but many didn't like their presence, probably because they had a power amongst them, unlike anything known to the other tribes. James Adair claims that the Creek Nation absorbed the majority of the Shawnee tribe. So again, the nation, in quote, consists of a mixture of several broken tribes whom the Muskogee, keep in mind, the Muskogee, the Red Sticks, you don't want to mess with them, artfully decoyed to incorporate with them in order to strengthen themselves against hostile attempts. Archaeological evidence, they say, indicates that in the late 17th and early 18th centuries, refugees gathered around a number of populous towns with a recent history of stability. So we're talking Georgia, Alabama, like North Florida, Tallahassee, Montgomery, Birmingham, Augusta, Savannah, Atlanta. Imagine these populous towns which are still present till this day. I got even more receipts. The history and records of the Israelites must be chiefly considered regarding the times before they had formed a nationality and had become sedentary. Nearly contemporaneous with the nationality was the general use of writing, and it would appear that the era of King David would be a demarcating line. The Indians never having arrived at that stage of nationality, though some of them, as the Iroquois and the Muskogee, the Red Sticks. We know the Iroquois. We know the Muskogee teamed up with the Shawnee and the Creek Nation, so we know there's a connection there. We're far on the road to it, and never have acquiring a written language, they say. Their stage at the Columbian discovery, allowing for the differences among themselves, shows a degree of development similar to that of the Israelite patriarchal period and the early Canaanite occupation before the rule of kings. I cannot make this up, man. Dragon Canoe strikes again. But I digress. Continue. The connection between the Shawnee and the Lost Tribes theory is a fascinating blend of colonial myth-making, they say, and a genuine Native American religious revival that shared many thematic similarities with the Old Testament. In the 18th and 19th centuries, explorers and traders frequently categorized the Shawnee as potential descendants of the Lost Tribes. Like the Israelites, the Shawnee were known as the greatest travelers in America, forced into a massive diaspora by the Iroquois and European expansion. Explorers saw this dispersal as a parallel to the Babylonian or Assyrian exiles. Observers claim that the Shawnee religious chants and names for the Creator were corruptions of Hebrew, though linguists today confirm the Shawnee is standard Algonquian, but we know that is just a precursor to Paleo-Hebrew. The Shawnee practiced rigorous ritual cleansings, especially for warriors, which Europeans often confused with Mosaic law. Greek oral tradition recalls that these refugees came bearing powerful medicine and gave local leaders sacred copper plates, which the Tecumsehs believed were from the upper world. After the Shawnees' arrival, the Raccoon, Fox, and Actayatakalgi clans formed a new phratry called the Sawanagalga, meaning Shawnee people. These may have been the clans that newcomers joined. Alternatively, native Muskogees may have forged this phratry in an effort to attract some of the sacred power that the Shawnees seemed to possess. So essentially, other tribes tried to align themselves with the Shawnees because they came bearing powerful medicine and had the greatest power. Tecumseh's dream of a pan-Indian state that could stand against the land-hungry whites was a course doomed from the start. Following their defeat at Tippecanoe by Harrison's forces on 7 November 1811, the Ohio Shawnees, under the leadership of Tecumseh and the Prophet, joined the British in the War of 1812. After some successes, the combined Indian and British forces were defeated in the Battle of Thames, near what is Chatham, Ontario. They say even if he had been able somehow to make the numerous rival tribes forget their ancient antagonisms and jealousies, the European American technology and military discipline would have prevailed in the end. The rebellion led by Tecumseh and his brother Tenskwatawa drew heavily on themes of purification and separation that resonated with Old Testament covenantal structures. Around 1805, Tenskwatawa claimed a vision from the Master of Life. Like a biblical prophet, he delivered a set of divine commandments, labeled the drink of the evil spirit, the prohibition of alcohol, ritual separation. He commanded Shawnees to reject all European goods, clothing, and intermarriage. Dietary restrictions. He deemed European livestock unclean and ordered followers to return to native game and corn. Tecumseh's political core was the belief that native land belonged to all tribes in common, a, end quote, covenant that could not be broken by individual sales. He used his brother's religious authority to unite desperate tribes from the Great Lakes to the south into a pan-Indian confederacy. Just as Old Testament prophets used signs to validate their authority, Tenskwatawa famously predicted a solar eclipse in 1806, When the sun went out, it cemented his status as a divinely appointed leader. The connection between the War of 1812, the New Madrid earthquake, and Tecumseh's journey is anchored in a famous prophetic threat that catalyzed native resistance. In late 1811, Tecumseh traveled south to recruit the Creek and other tribes into his Pan-Indian Confederacy. At the Upper Creek town of Tuckabashie, he faced resistance from leaders like Big Warrior, who favored assimilation and peace with the United States. Legend states that a frustrated Tecumseh declared he would leave for Detroit, and upon his arrival, stamp his foot. He warned that when he did this, the earth would tremble and every house in Tuckabashie would be shaken down as a sign of his divine authority. So from the looks of it, Detroit versus everybody isn't a new thing. It's been the thing. Even Tecumseh rocked with Detroit. When he got back, he stomped down every house in Tuckabashie town. The Ridge met him in September 1811 at the Creek capital of Tuckabashie on the banks of the Tallapoosa, well to the south in Georgia. The Ridge had arrived quietly with his men when Tecumseh marched in like a Roman emperor as part of a grand procession of 40 foot soldiers, all of them dressed for war, with silver bands about the biceps, circles of fire around the eyes, streaks of blood red down the chest, their hair plaited in long black strands. Tecumseh himself wore a pair of tall crane feathers, one white, one a dazzling vermilion. So again, you can't make this up. This description is uncanny, man. Let me know what y'all think. On December 16, 1811, just as Tecumseh was reaching the Detroit region, the first and most violent of the New Madrid earthquakes struck the Mississippi Valley. The timing was so precise that many Creeks and other tribes were terrified, believing Tecumseh had fulfilled his prophecy. This event empowered the militant faction of the Creeks, known as the Red Sticks or Muskogees, the violent militant faction called the Red Sticks, who took the earthquake as a divine command to join Tecumseh's war against the Americans. Let's get this newspaper clip real quick. It is a singular but well-authenticated fact that in several places on the Mississippi where the shocks were most severe, the earth was rent by two distinct processes. By one, it was burst asunder and instantaneously closed, leaving no trace whatever of the shock. By the other, it was rent, and an electric flash ran along the surface, tearing the earth to pieces in its progress. These last were generally attended with an explosion, and streams of matter in a liquid state gushed from the gaps, which were left open when the shock subsided, and were in many instances of an immense depth. It is also reported through the medium of some Indians from the country adjacent to the Washita, some distance above Natchez, that the burning mountains up the Washita River had been rent to its base. Rent to his base. Tecumseh arrived back in the north to find that his brother, the prophet, had already lost the Battle of Tippecanoe, fracturing the Confederacy. Realizing he could no longer stand alone against the U.S., Tecumseh took his remaining followers to Fort Malden, near Detroit, and formed a formal alliance with the British. His presence near Detroit was crucial to the British victory at the Siege of Detroit in August 1812. The earthquake essentially served as the prophetic green light that turned a regional tribal dispute into a widespread conflict that merged with the War of 1812. The Red Stick War was a direct outgrowth of the religious fervor sparked by the New Madrid earthquake and Tecumseh's prophecy, effectively serving as the southern theater of the War of 1812. After the earthquake validated Tecumseh's power, a militant faction of the Creek Nation, the Red Sticks, aka Muskogees, began a campaign to purge European influence and reclaim their land. The conflict started as an internal struggle between the traditionalist Red Sticks and Lower Creek leaders who favored assimilation with the U.S. The war shifted from a tribal dispute to a full-scale American war after the Fort Mims Massacre, August 1813, where Red Sticks killed hundreds of settlers in Loyalist Creeks. This event shocked the young republic and prompted a massive military response from Tennessee and Georgia militias. The Red Sticks popped it off. The U.S. response was led by none other than Andrew Jackson, whose career was built on the destruction of the Red Stick movement. The conflict culminated at the Battle of Horseshoe Bend, where Jackson's forces killed over 800 warriors, they say, the highest death toll for Native Americans in a single battle in U.S. history. Following the defeat, the Creek Nation was forced to cede 23 million acres of land, roughly half of present-day Alabama, to the entire United States. 23 million acres of land. This victory cleared the South, allowing Jackson to move his experienced troops to defend the Gulf Coast, leading to his famous win at the Battle of New Orleans. The Red Stick War fundamentally reshaped the American South. The massive land cession sparked a migration boom known as Alabama Fever, leading to the state's admission to the Union in 1819. The fame Jackson gained from these battles propelled him to the presidency, where he later implemented the Indian Removal Act, forcibly moving the same tribes that had been his allies to Oklahoma on the Trail of Tears. The influence of the Shawnee refugees is also apparent in Tecumseh's ceremonial title, Tecumseh Spakogi. All 4 Creek mother towns had such titles. The lower Creek capitals were known as Tall Coweta and Big Cousetta, while the meaning of Upper Town Abika's designation Nagi remains obscure. For the Tecumsehs, Spakogi probably reflects a Muskogean corruption of the Kispakoki Shawnees, the band that settled among them. The Tecumsehs' decision to include the appellation in their ceremonial title reflects how integral the Shawnee refugees were to their group identity. These strong towns, Tecumseh on the lower Tallapoosa River, Abika on the middle Coosa, and Cousetta and Coweta on the lower Chattahoochee, became the Creek mother towns, or birthplaces of the nation. The history of Tecumseh in particular demonstrates how the Creek Nation became home to a remarkably diverse group of people. During the 17th century, when many native towns and chiefdoms vanished, Tecumseh's population soared. Founded, the Tecumseh became the most populous Upper Creek town of the colonial era. The Shawnees themselves were mound builders. If nothing is found to disprove the very logical deductions of Professor Thomas in his, in quote, story of a mound, or the Shawnees in Pre-Columbian times, in which he gives his reasons for believing them to be the builders of the famous Etowah Mounds in Bartow County, Georgia, and many smaller earthworks and burial places in Tennessee, Kentucky, and other states. So the Shawnees have quite the reputation. If Tecumseh said the land couldn't be traded because the land was attached to covenantal promises, much like land was an important factor on the promises passed down post and pre-Mosaic law, then that would mean that the so-called Indians have the same energy that the Bruce had when it came to keeping covenant promises. So if the land is under covenant, it really don't matter at this point what happened in the past, because that land is ours. So y'all let me know what y'all think. Leave a note in the comments. We going off on this one. Part 66. It's a hit. Dragon Canoe checking in again. All praises to the Most High.